"Ah," said the woman, "were you crying?"
No, said Sharon. I was laughing.
She was given a new identity, and her present whereabouts were unknown to all but a few.
But like every kiss, this one is an answer. A clumsy but tender answer to a question that eludes the power of language.
And the three of them looked at one another and laughed. And then started to mount the animals.
Light a cigarette. Shake your head as you look out over the grey enthroned city and laugh.
When he closed his office door behind him, the last thing he saw was Bart sweeping Janelle into his arms and silencing her protests with a passionate kiss.
"Hiya, Don," she said in amazement, feeling at last his arms wrapped tightly around her.
After all, tomorrow is another day. He should have told her a year ago. But it didn't matter. Nothing did, except Daphne.
For the first time, they had done something out of love.
And little by little, raising his arms aloft, amid the joyful laughter and the cries of the others, he joined her in the dance.
You always were.
And finally, utterly themselves, they drifted into their club, an elegant pair, looking for the cocktail lounge.
Mine too, she said. It's Binky. Binky, come back.
But he waited for the girl to come back so he could tell her what had occurred to him.
I love you too, Molly.
The end. First thing, she repeated with a smile, before he closed his eyes to kiss her properly.
"Go on, my son," thought Archie.
Her heart lifted.
But she turned away from it.
And went home with the boy next door.
Maybe some glance at her stalwart husband was a sufficient answer.
"'Twill be enough," Johnny replied, lowering his mouth to hers once more.
"I'm talking about me, not him."
Nay, man! His eyes danced, and he leaned over and kissed her.
She couldn't place it. It troubled her in some mysterious way, yet also made her happy.
The sunlight on her back, the breeze against her wings, the water cool under her feet. Her eggs warming and maturing in the flesh of the cabra. Life so long waited for. And could it be today that she could? Would be not the last of her tribe, but the first.
It was almost certain that I wouldn't sleep that night.
They rose then, their garments soaked through, pressed lips to lips, as they embraced each other in the darkness. For a moment, for a time, forever.
Neither said anything, and Wren kept his arms around Torrance' shoulders as they walked slowly into the grey drizzle.
And when I look up, his eyes have opened, and those blazing coals of enmity are staring right into my lacerated, penitent inner self.
We thought we would know each other forever.
He She drew a breath and stepped down off the scaffolding.
You've never been to bed with a yoga master, have you?
The end. I couldn't catch him.
He left the note on her bare breasts and went out into the Miami heat. They would create their own home and their own future on the firm foundation of their love.
Just give me one more chance, I said, and I promise it will be worth it.
Just this once.
Promise to return, to come back home no matter what. Tom, I'll kill you. She was laughing as she chased him up the hill into the tall pines.
It had taken a long time, and it very nearly hadn't happened at all. But Angel had found her happy ever after at last.
The end. We'll certainly try, darling, won't we?
Isabel smiled. I wouldn't bet on it.
Above them, closely woven branches of hazel trees in the spinney whispered together, but neither Greg nor Dinah heard them for a long time.
He would be there all night, and he would be there when Jim waked up in the morning.
She pushed the shoe further towards him, and very quietly she left.
Then I turned my boat around and followed the moon home to bed. And then I did what I had never done in his presence, much less in his arms. I cried.
As soon as I saw you, I knew it was you.
The end!
Laura's mouth dropped open.
The end! You are loved!
The end!
It is love, Robert. Love. And only love. For both of us, a new life is beginning.
Curtain! Because he was a secretive man, he was glad at least of one thing, that no one would ever know.
He did not come back that night. Days went by, and at last she understood that he would not return at all.
As usual, they were not disappointed. I don't have any idea what happens next. Neither do you.
You can do whatever you like.
I thought you'd never ask.
Used by a husband of a wife, by a servant of a mistress.
She almost smiled at the thought of it, and closed her eyes and tried to imagine nothing more.
They faced the future together, which was all she would ever want.
And if I wish to pay her out of something very dreadful, as may happen once or twice, when we become too gladsome, I bring her to a forgotten sadness, and to me, by the cure of it, and by 2 words, Lorna do.
She turned away. Goodbye.
No, Rosie said, as she put her head on her sister's shoulders. Nothing at all.
Please hold me! And I did.
When they attempted to detach this skeleton from the one it was embracing, it fell to dust.
Together! Mister, what's wrong with your wife? Why is she crying?
I suppose, he said, looking deep into my eyes, a ride is out of the question.
All things considered, she didn't give a damn.
The woman, Dillard whispered. The woman. They said he missed that whore.
I have a hunch. You make a hell of a redhead, honey, he said.
She was happy enough to be alone, she said.
It's you.
Till death do us part. I don't believe in that anymore.
Please don't forget me.
I took her hand in mine, and we went out of the ruined place. As the morning mists had risen long ago when I first left the forge, so the evening mists were rising now. The broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me, and I saw no shadow of another parting from her.
That she was carrying crosses.
Child!
Is my shit? Smell my piss? I am the queen. I'm not that tired, she said. After all, a girl needs the use of her own lips to speak with.
My darling. My wonderful darling. I am brave. Hurry up. Go on. Hang up. Hang up quickly. Hang up. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Curtain!
Still, he managed to postpone oblivion for a few minutes, choosing instead to rest his eyes on Amelia Sash's face, pale and half visible through her hair, like the midpoint of a lunar eclipse.
And because Laura didn't answer, he went back to what he was doing before.
Victor smiled across the pillow. I shall hold you in them forever, mi amor, he assured her.
It snapped back for a moment, because the pillow loosened on her face, and she could feel his fingers between her legs, invading her vagina. And she took a breath, and she heaved under him, and somehow the pillow was off. and he was a huge mass, looming over her, sticking his penis into her. And she began screaming, and he tried to cover her head, but she kept screaming. And then he had the lamp in his hand, raised over her head, and it was going to come down on her head and, "Help, Mommy, Daddy! Dear God, help me!" Do it! Do it and get it over with! "Nurse," I said. "Nurse!" But she was gone.
Not in the world, according to God. You're all terminal cases.
The end.
And I can't read my thoughts of Lisa's words and her kisses in that hospital unit.
These hands, the hands that care, the hands that mold, the hands that touch the lips that speak the words that tell us we are whole.
My mother, at her final journey completed, has run out of breath.
She's dead, I tell him.
It happened of itself, in the calm way, that in the evening, nighttime follows day.
I assume now that death, when it finally comes, it will probably be nastier than suicide, and certainly a great deal more convenient. "Don't ever try and kill me, you bastard!" she said to the dead man before her.
A knife came down, missing him by inches, and then he took off.
It was dead fast, acidic and hard. And as the breeze rustles across the back of my neck, as a door slams behind me forever.
I went back to my work, my shovel slicing into the mulchy earth, the child in fervent silence digging around me. The end!
Now, clear your throat and dry these tears.
I was no longer. Life was real.
After all his suffering, real and imagined, perhaps at the end, in his last quiet sleep, he caught a glimpse of the cloudless horizon that was always his image of serenity.
Disappearing into the darkness.
The end.
He must grapple if he ever hoped to find himself and live.
Soon, unexpectedly, like the future that had begun to creep up on him, sleep did come.
Crammed into the midget house, 1 foot through the stairs, his head lolling through the window, Hilary Bird lay smiling with a knife through his throat.
At moments, he almost thought that he had left the world behind.
Almost. The gun Bill Roach had finally convinced himself was, after all, a dream.
Still kneeling, holding the automatic in both hands. Got to watch the money drifting lazily towards the earth as the aircraft vanished into the night.
Then, before I could even get out of the chair, Ruston York turned the gun around in his hand, jumped the muzzle of it into his mouth, and pulled the trigger.
He turned from me and walked away. I watched his back receding down the long, gleaming hall.
I'd inherited his life and laid him to rest. And that the moment I might hurt, I might throb. I didn't think I'd ever been happier.
At least he saved us all his funeral expenses, he said.
everlasting hope.
I'm going to hope for the best. How can I sing the blues while my mother dances in heaven?
And there's no sign of her?
Not a soul was about! And in the stillness of the night, awakened countless ghosts along this white, unending road, lined with tombstones.
I believe it nonetheless, because that look is in a church, and she was weak and eerie.
Till then, I'll sweat and seek about my eases, and at that time bequeath you my diseases.
I thought of the poison being carried with every beat of her pulses. I knew that I should never speak to Mrs. Andrews again.
It began to seem to Maria the world was too large, and that love was a dangerous game, and that the Virgin was a saint who inhabited a distant heaven and who didn't listen to the prayers of the children.
For now, all they could do was cling and weep. For Sam, for no, for themselves, and for the possibility of love enduring without forgiveness, and for the blind, trusting love of constantly betrayed children everywhere.
Our vulnerability suddenly touched me. All our terrible, moving weaknesses contained in a jacket, a skirt, a pair of shoes.
I carry a lot of scars.
Bell by his side in the days, and enfolded in his arms at night, until at death did they part.
The end. Softly, she started singing to him a baby's lullaby.
We'll meet again soon. Since the time the child was sent to me, and I've come to love her as myself, I've had light enough to trust him by. And now she says she'll never leave me. I think I shall trust him till I die.
But over the old man's head, they looked at each other and smiled. A nurse came out and fetched me. I returned and followed her inside, and it were as if I were walking into the sea.
The oldest had borne most. We that are young shall never see so much, nor live so long.
Exeunt was a dead march.